and welcome to The Conversation, the podcast. I'm Happy Crater, and our guest today is Veronica, an elder from Chimnasing in Ontario, and also an elder and the firekeeper at the encampment at Strathcona Park here in Vancouver. Welcome, Veronica.
Thank you. Yeah, you did get that correct.
Yeah, I got Chimnasing right. Good. Yeah, I was trying to remember as we're coming. Okay, good. I got
Very
it.
good.
Chimnasing.
Very good.
My first question is about your relationship to your spirituality, your tradition. What is that relationship for you?
I was born in India, and I didn't really find out until I was, a bit older, able to at least talk. But it came a time, I grew up in Indian country where the only ones who were around were Indians. And I don't think we knew we were Indians. We didn't talk about we were Indians. We were just, us and in our family, in our community. And it took a while before I came upon other peoples that weren't part of the family. And but also too, I grew up, carrying water.
Oh,
Yeah,
so what does that mean? What does it mean to carry water?
Carrying water is being able to know our life, knowing us in relation to all that is around us. We carry water. We are warmed and fed by fire, cooking by fire, cooking wood on wood stoves, open fields where we made little fires and cooked our food that way. There was no hydro. No hydro, no flipping switches or turn the dial, any of that, channels or anything. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the traditions of your family are passed down through generations, and they're just a part of growing up, of your learning?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's more recently I'm told and I am aware that I walk with 1,000 of my ancestors that walk with me. And hence I have no fear.
And so how does that show up in your life today?
Today that I'm able to carry this fire, be this firekeeper, having been with elders, my elders, peoples that have given me the responsibility to light a fire and follow that fire and carry that fire in a good way, and to be there for the community that fire, the duration of that fire, and to care for those and to do no harm, and that no one is hurt by that fire. That fire is for the good, of the people, and the people is in my language Anishinaabe is the people, Anishinaabe, and that's who the people are, and that is all of us. That is all of us, and I carry that fire for us all, and I've never heard any of my elders talk or show me signs or in any way that anyone is bad. I don't know any bad of people, or that fire comes in any way as a form of bad. So that's colonization has imposed those kinds of ideas and planted those. And I'm pretty thick-headed, so it was pretty easy not to let those influences in. Yeah.
And now that fire is burning in Strathcona Park.
It is.
And
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about the importance of that location and who it serves?
Yes, Strathcona has moved from other homeless tent communities, and there, uh, with that fire, holding that fire, and that it be a fire that's burning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's fire that and wood that has been given by the many in the ceremonial community, and most recently, community has included those whose parents and grandparents have had fireplaces and no longer burn fires, because there may be a bylaw against fireplaces in the city now. And so all of this dusty wood has come my way. Very dry and beautiful. Oh my gosh, to smell a piece of cherry wood in the fire is just like some of the most beautiful smell. We don't do any burning of food there, and I know that many in the different communities and ceremonial peoples like to send offerings, food offerings to their families and ancestors, but that's not this kind of fire. And this fire specifically is to do the work for drawing the community together who are homeless, to provide a central place of goodness in each person that comes into the tenting community.
Wow. I've been engaged in 4 different tent cities. And both this one in Strathcona Park, where I'm a visitor and guest sometimes, and in Crab Park, something that was very important was the ceremony and the protocol about guests coming to join the community, and specifically around the fire. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's important and maybe how that shapes the spirit of the camp?
It's an adherence, I guess. I find that a harsh word, but it is one where everyone is invited, included in the community of the tent city, as an ally, as a helper, as a volunteer, as a advocate, and anyone who thinks they're coming in to do harm doesn't want to come to the fire, because we do ask that when they come to the fire, we have 4 of the main medicines recognized by most of the indigenous communities of Turtle Island, and that is the cedar, the sweetgrass, the sage, and tobacco. And those 4 medicines are the medicines that are kept on a table exclusively. Just those 4 medicines. Somebody, I think, recently brought some lavender from their garden and had a long story about the wonders and the beauty of lavender, and so we keep a little bit there for anybody who feels as though they like to add a little lavender to the fire. But otherwise, those are the 4 main medicines that we use in the fire, and everyone who comes to the fire puts in the protocol of tobacco. Tobacco, it goes for their family. We ask them to put that. I ask them to put that medicine into the fire for their family, for their community, and for themselves. And then after that, either sage or cedar, which are also very cleansing and very plentiful in the territories here. I ask people to take some of that, one of those medicines or some of those medicines and put them in the fire again. Recognizing that we're on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and we are gifted. We are given and gifted to reside and to put up our tents and be present here in their homeland, and so recognizing that as well, the wood, the medicines come from locally here, definitely from Turtle Island here, and that all of this is a part of how we represent the protocol that everyone abides by, which includes no violence.
Yeah.
No violence. There can be no violence,
Yeah.
and that's not even to give you a bad name.
Interesting. I've seen this, and I have seen the result of because in the previous 2 tent cities I was involved in, where there was not a sacred fire where people were asked to perform this protocol, it seemed much more chaotic. And something about this ceremony that I think it brings to light these sort of values that you are sharing here, that have people enter the space with a more of a maybe a peaceful understanding or intention.
Yes, I agree that it is, and they become community together. And I once they've completed those little simple rituals, I let them know you are now at home, and you are a member of an ever-growing community.
Wow, that's beautiful. And that leads me right to the next question, because I'm interested in how the spirit of that tradition, of that spiritual tradition or faith tradition, whatever you might call it, how that might apply to our living together in society at large, in Canadian society at large, where we maybe might go through our days without such a specific intention, and maybe without a ceremony to kind of make that intention real. Do you think there's a way that society at large has something to learn from something like the Sacred Fire or the encampment in Strathcona?
Is there a learning? If one is open, yeah. Oh, for sure. I think that those who come to the fire and get this, go through this protocol and are welcomed into the community, see the people in the community as human beings. And when seeing them as a human being and able to talk with them, it's very clear how there's so much in common. That human being is a good person.
I saw this also another sort of demonstration of this spiritual value that you mentioned a couple times: do no harm. When on the day that the police came to displace people from Crab Park, and I was there to witness. And there were many protesters, some inside the fence being arrested and some outside also observing. And there was a moment, I know you'll remember, where the protesters outside the fence became agitated. They're pushing on the fence. The fence almost came down.
Right.
The police rushed over and then came around the other side of the fence. And then there was some pushing and shoving between police and protesters. And with some help, you came over to the fence and spoke very softly to the police and to the protesters. And you spoke about the principle of doing no harm.
Do no harm.
And it was so effective. I watched the mood of this conflict. I watched like the temperature come down. Well, there you are, all 5 foot something of you, speaking in a quiet voice.
Yeah.
And I was so moved by that demonstration of the Spirit. Can you talk a little bit about how what it is that moved you to be able to speak and engage in that way with a large agitated group of conflicting sides, and just change the mood of that crowd?
Yeah. I could see on the hill children, and I could see young people, yet very agitated. I could see that the police were running. I could see the fence moving, and I one of the things I didn't want to happen is for anyone to misunderstand those of us who were being arrested, and those of us who were making clearly a very bold stand. I talked with many of those who were being arrested. You are being arrested, and you may never have had this situation happen before, to stand up and to be arrested. And so my heart is for sure with all of these ones. The ones that I asked to stand aside and to leave the area were the Indigenous peoples and the people who, in fact, before coming to Crab parking lot, were being shifted on a daily basis off of sidewalks, picked up whatever little things that they could grab onto, and lots of their belongings stuffed into a garbage bin. And to have those people make that decision to be arrested in their place, to take that stand, to understand the issues around homelessness, and to side with those ones who were tenting at Crab parking lot, was a stand I wanted them to carry on, and for that to be the focus of the day, and not to be distracted by outside and side issues, either by the police and or by those who were there to witness. So when that pushing and shoving was going on, I noticed that as I say, the pushing and the shoving and the fence moving, and I was in fear that do no harm. I for sure, that was not about us taking that stand, causing any harm to anyone, and that's, I mean, truly so, anyone. Likewise, to impress upon those who are in the uniforms that we are a peaceful people. We are governed by a sacred fire to do no harm. Excuse me. To do no harm, but to be there to make a strong stand for all the homeless.
I loved also the moment when you spoke about the humanity of the people in uniform too. It gets so easy to have an us versus them conversation, but your way of reminding us all of each other's humanness, no matter how we're dressed that day or what our purpose is there that day, was absolutely beautiful and powerful. And your soft voice in that moment is like it brought it settled everyone and had them listen. And it reminded me actually of this Middle Eastern wisdom that says the perfume seller has no need to shout. So whereas everyone else selling their wares is shouting, "Hey, come get this," the perfume seller lets the scent attract people. Mm-hmm. And the integrity of your standing and speaking to everyone was absolutely palpable. And I would love to see more of that spirit infused in communities across our country where there's still so much conflict, especially between people living in poverty and often and police and the people tasked with trying to maintain order in those communities. Do you see a way that as a society we can start to embody that more of that do no harm, that peaceful principle?
I do easily, very easily, and it is that simple little fire, and the fire keepers making those commitments. I have right by my ears, a thousand of ancestors that speak to me, and it's that quiet voice that prompts me to when they're talking to me. I see them just on the other side of any other controversy, and they're there, so strong encircling us.
So, Veronica, when you mention that you have no fear in some of these situations where many of us would experience fear, how is it that your faith or your spiritual tradition prompts you to be so either courageous or fearless?
I have, and many Indians and many other cultures really understand connection to our ancestors, and mine come through this fire, and any fire that I come to and am near, that's exactly, I always connect to my ancestors and invite my ancestors to be with me and to be with all of us that are present there, and invite, as I say, the family and the community. And when I ask people to put that tobacco in, what they're doing is, in fact, I believe, inviting their ancestors, inviting their family to come in and to be a part of this growing circle of humanity that cares for one another and who do no harm, and because we're family and one doesn't harm their family. So the ancestors that come with me are 1,000 strong. 1,000 strong. I've been to many ceremonies and have done this very thing, and am able to see that my ancestors do come, and they're there. They're present with me. I feel them around me. The wind in the air, the little sparks in the fire, and the grass waving in the fields. Ancestors. It's all, to me. It is my ancestors letting me know that they're present. The birds that fly in the sky, the sound of the trees, the sound of the wind. That's ancestors in being near. And so they're how can one have fear when the ancestors are so close? And then, what a gift to be called home. That's my thinking.
Yeah, to be called home when your journey is complete.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's very, very powerful. And it also brings to mind another question, which is that with this faith of yours, with this spirit or the spiritual tradition comes as sort of a meaning or a purpose for your being here on Earth, on Turtle Island now. How does your connection to your tradition give you that meaning, or point you in the direction of your purpose?
Well, I have to go back and perhaps give a little bit of history to this, and that is, as I was growing up as a small child, I remember the first picture that was ever taken of me. I've not forgotten that ever in my life. And in later years, after going through 60 Scoop and all things growing up, coming back into my family home and being around with my father, who was a medicine carrier for our nation, and those teachers that I got to be around because he was my father, told me that I, as a traditional, did not have my picture taken, did not sit in front of cameras, did not pose for cameras.
Today.
Yeah, did not talk on speakers, and I, coming out here to Vancouver and to the West Coast, I held that. I've held that for all and most of my life, and chose not to be filmed, and chose not to have pictures, and not to stand in front of cameras or speaker phones or microphones. And I thought that the First Nations from out here were well able to. Murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls came to light, and I've worked on that for just short of 40 years. And at the National Inquiry's final report and the ending of the the inquiry, I made a decision personally, having gone away and sat alone and came up with this: it's time. It's time for me, for Indian women, Indigenous women, to come forward, to be in that light, to sit before cameras, before microphones, and to talk and tell their stories. And in so doing, it meant that I myself, a traditional Indian woman, grown up with my father, who carried that medicine, and having been forever told by many elders that that was not my place, and that I was to walk softly. And I thought that I made a decision to it's time for us as Indian women and Indian men to come forward and to tell our stories, and to use our words, and to let the world know we are here.
Great. Well, I'm so happy that you're here. And for maybe some people still may not be familiar with 60 Scoop, and you've mentioned it. Can you say something about what it was, the 60 Scoop? And I don't know how much you'd like to say about your own experience with it, but it's worth illuminating for people.
Thank you. Yes, I am a 60 Scoop person. It happened in my family way back a long time ago, when my father didn't want us kids going to residential school, so we went off the reserve, and we were transient farm workers. And we ran away from all the white people in the coming in cars, and had to go hide in the woods as a little child, so that the agents and the police wouldn't catch us, and the church wouldn't get us and send us to residential school. And so that was a pretty complicated, harsh part of life. always being on the run, but yet eventually moving and running into a city where my mother and father didn't really speak and read and write. They spoke a bit, but reading and writing in English, they didn't read and write in English. And life got pretty hard, and there were no real jobs for my father, and we were a growing family. My sister passed away, and she was our primary caregiver. My mom's life was pretty hard and difficult. My sister went to residential school, and my oldest brother went to residential school. When my sister passed away, the family unit just came apart more and more, and my family extended family couldn't raise us, couldn't help us. Such poverty, such huge poverty on reservations when we were dropped off there, that there was no one in the family that could take us in. They were all feeding their own families, and there wasn't a lot of extra food. So we were taken to the children's aid service, I think it's called. I'm not sure, but yeah, we were left there and taken into the foster care system. One of the first ones in most of all of my territory, mostly first ones from my reservation, and left there, and my family had to go back to the reserve without us. My grandmother, who wanted us and tried to keep us, she was not able to take us in, because she was already had many other family members in there with children. So the 60 scoop came along as we got into foster care and into adoption homes, and we lost everything. We lost our family, my mother and my father, no contact. My grandma died. That, I think, is more than anything I can think of the greatest harm done to me by the 60 scoop. That hurts.
I see that.
The biggest harm done was that my grandmother had passed away without my presence, me being there, without me knowing. And I ran away from the homes, and ran to the reserve, ran home to find out that my grandma had gone.
With all that tragedy, how has your faith and spirituality helped you move through the spaces of that pain?
Well, I did end up going to prison very early. The judge saying they didn't know what to do with me. And so I, very young, was put into prison. And my father came to that prison, and with the help of other Indians, was able to have me released and taken into my family again. The teachings began, and again I was taken to the old Indian women's homes, and well, I washed pots and pans, and peeled potatoes and lots of potatoes, and fed communities, started to feed communities, started to help out, and it was with that talking and my father being a pipe carrier, picking up a pipe for for our nation, not just our small community and not just the Toronto community, but he picked up a pipe for all of the nation. They had a big ceremony, people coming from all over the place, including Alberta and down south in the United States, came up to celebrate the day that he was called forward to receive that pipe. I was present.
Wow.
What an awesome time that was. I was just young and really silly, just starting, middle teens, I guess that was when they stopped repatriating me back to homes and so on. And so I was aware that my dad received that pipe. Didn't occur to me what that was all about, but it was that being able to travel with him, going into the homes of elders and sitting with elders and being walking in a elders with the elders when it came time for Indians to begin standing up and begin moving forward into the circle of life. And that's how we talk of it, that we are all on a circle of life, and Indians have our lives in circles. We don't have linear lives, and we also don't have what are the lives where nuclear
Right.
family lives. Yeah, we have this big village community. Yeah, we have big circles that are part of our existence, and includes not just two-legged people, but it includes all of the animals and all of the everything that is a part of our world. And with that I work with, and that I have grown up with those kinds of teachings from those old people that didn't speak English, and so was needed to have interpreters that came along and from that spoken language to tell us those of us grown up in residential and 60 scoops, not having our language, that those elders could tell us these things that how we were to live our lives and teach us, and we would have that interpreted into the English language as best it could be, because a lot of our languages aren't able to be translated, and we don't have big words for television and so on.
Right. So it's almost as if when the understanding of time and life as being a circle, that there's nothing truly new or old. Everything kind of exists at once, and not only in time but also in form, because the animals and people in your family and your village are all also connected. And does that sound like I'm getting that sort of right?
Yeah, that is right. That is right. My father described it as though he were a small grain of sand. He were a small grain of sand on a large beach, and all those other grains of sand, many colors, many shapes, many parts, and moving off and moving around, and water moving around us, and just being there. We are all of us, and it doesn't. The sand doesn't change. It's the same sand, but yet it's been always constantly moving, and that's like us. And I think that that's like the world. And we're here, and whether we're alive or our essence goes back into a tree, our being. Yeah, I always said things like, when I become a bird. Yeah, because I think in those terms. Those are the terms I think of, and then one day I may be maybe a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
Come back as a mouse.
Right, and therefore that allows the experiences of this journey, allows you to have them be as they are, and move through those spaces
Yeah.
with grace and dignity.
For sure. I become one of the ancestors.
Veronica, thank you so much for sharing today. Thanks for this conversation, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.